Well, if you were here last week, we started our new series called Restore. And Pastor Jim kicked it off with teaching us how to restore beauty from ashes. Wasn't it such a good word? Man, such a good word. Restoring beauty from ashes. Today, I want us to look at how do we restore our spiritual strength? How do we restore our spiritual strength? I don't know about you guys, but these last couple weeks have been pretty rough. For our family, it's just been tough. I don't know if you guys have ever walked through a season where everything breaks, everybody's sick at the same time, everybody wants something from you, and you're just depleted. Has anybody ever walked through a season like that? Well, you know, I kind of look at it as this. If you can imagine that we are cars, and our spirits are gas tanks. Some of us have a full tank right now, right? Like our spirit is good. We are clicking on all cylinders. Everything's going great. Some of us are half full. We need to top off. We need to fill up a little bit, but we're good. And then some of us are sucking fumes. Anybody in the house sucking fumes right now? Y'all. That's what it feels like. But can I just tell you that for us to figure out how to restore our spiritual strength, we have to look at where our strength comes from. So where does our strength come from? Ephesians 6:10 through 11 says, "Your strength must come from the Lord's mighty power within you. Put on all of God's armor so that you'll be able to stand against all the strategies and tricks of Satan." God wants to restore our strength, but it has to come from His power that is within us. It has to come from His power so that we can live the life that He has called us to live. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for your word. Lord, I thank you that you use broken vessels to teach your word. Father, I pray right now that you will refresh our spirit. God, that as we leave here today, we will feel renewed. God, I pray that any distractions that are happening will just disappear and we will lean in to the word that you have for us today. In your mighty name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, we're going to be looking into the book of Judges. We're going to be going through chapters 13 through 16. So if you're following along with us on your church app or in your message notes, we're going to be talking about Samson. And let me just tell you, Samson, if you grew up in church, you know this story. But if you didn't, Samson's like a real live Marvel superhero, okay? Y'all, he killed lions with his bare hands. He ripped city gates off the structure. Like, he had enormous strength and power, right? So when I was growing up and we would hear stories of Samson, all the little boys are like, I want to be like Samson. And I'm like, I want to be like Samson, right? Like he just has this crazy power. He used to fight the Philistines in hand-to-hand combat, taking out thousands of people with donkey like jawbones. Like it's crazy. But I think that the older that I've gotten, the more that I've struggled with this story. Because this story is not just about a superhero. It's also about a human being who is filled with pride and disobedience and sinful relationships with women. But there are some profound lessons under the surface. You see, Samson's story starts before he's born. The angel comes to his mother while he's in her womb and he says, your son is going to deliver the people of Israel. This angel speaks to her and her husband and says, your son, see, the Israelites had been acting out again. And so they were under the reign of the Philistines. And so he's telling her, your son is going to deliver your people. Y'all, that's a pretty amazing thing to get from an angel of God. And so this is how his story starts. And he has all these blessings on his life. And he even has some early successes. But somewhere along the line, Samson started to lose his spiritual strength. And as he began to lose those things, he didn't really finish the race well. So to restore and keep our spiritual strength, there are 3 weaknesses that we must overcome. So if you're taking notes with us today, to restore my spiritual strength, I must first overcome my lack of self-control. My lack of self-control. So the fact is that even good things can become harmful if they're not controlled. Y'all know that? Food, money, sex, alcohol, sleep. All these things can be gifts from God. But if they're not in control, they can damage our lives. Anyone ever had an issue with self-control? Yeah, we all have weaknesses. But God wants to strengthen us. He wants to strengthen our spirit so that we can stand firm against the attacks of the flesh. So what was Samson's weakness? Well, he had a few. Pride, disobedience, anger, sinful relationships with women. And that's just to name a few. You see, in Judges 14, Samson sees a beautiful woman and he tells his mom and dad, go get her for him. So right there, we see that he's tempted with disobedience because he wants this Philistine woman as his wife. And in that culture, you didn't do that. A Jewish man did not marry a Philistine woman. The book of Judges says, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And this is telling to us because Moses had said years earlier, you should not do what we are doing here today. Everyone doing what is right in their own eyes. Scripture says that he said, go get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. This phrase captures more than Samson's attraction. It reveals the condition of his heart. He just wants what he wants. So imagine with me, we're going to go on a boat ride. And we get a little bit offshore and the captain comes on the intercom and says, hey guys, don't worry about it. We got this little leak. It's not a big deal. It's like 2 inches wide. It's really not a big deal. We're going to be fine. This is a big boat. It'll take a long time to sink this ship. Y'all, a leak is a leak, right? Like if somebody said to me, there's a little leak in the boat, I'd be like, get me off the boat, right? Get me off the boat. But what I know is that a little leak can turn into a flood. A little leak can sink your ship. And I think that for me, in my life, there have been moments where I'm being tempted with something, and the enemy is saying, oh, it's just a little thing. It's not a big deal. You're not really being disobedient or sinful. You're just struggling right now. But here's what I know. That little leak can turn into a flood. That little leak can sink my ship if I don't take control of it. And what I know is that my ship is affected, not just because my family's on it, but because y'all are on it. So if I don't learn self-control and I don't pull away from that temptation, then that little leak can turn into a big issue. So how do we overcome this weakness? We have to base our decisions on principle rather than pleasure. Base our decisions on principle rather than pleasure. If we don't, we lack self-control. We always are going to want to do the fun, convenient, pleasurable thing, not necessarily the right thing. This just happened. The Lord kept speaking to my heart about a specific situation, and I just kept pushing it to the side. I was like, I'll get to it. It's not really a big deal. It's not really affecting anybody else. And the Lord just kept speaking and speaking. And this week, that leak turned into a flood, right? Has anybody else ever felt that? Like, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. And then all of a sudden, boom. So this flood happens, and I melted. I'm going to be honest. On Thursday, I melted. And someone called and was checking on me, and I'm just crying. And I literally, in my head, while this person is speaking to me on the phone, said, I can't do it. I can't teach this weekend. I'm going to call Bart. He's going to be fine. He's going to pull something out. I know he's got something in there. And I'm going to leave. Like, I kicked into full flight mode. Like, I'm leaving. So this person's trying to encourage me on the phone. I'm like, nope, I'm getting out of here. Jim's gone. I'm gone. It's fine. I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to take off. Can I tell you that in that moment, as I am telling God what I'm going to do, has anybody else ever felt that? You're telling God what you're going to do, and I'm telling God what I'm going to do, and I hear all this commotion outside, and I'm like, what in the world is happening? And I'm ready to leave. And I go to look out, and y'all, my neighbors are doing some sort of construction, and 2 cement trucks back up to each other in front of my driveway. Let me tell you, in that moment, I can assure you, God was telling me, you ain't going nowhere. You're going to deal with this situation. I tried to coach you. I tried to show you. I tried to teach you. Now you ain't going to run because you sprung a leak. So get it together. So when I say that I'm preaching this message right now out of faith, y'all be gentle with me because I'm preaching this message out of faith. But why do we think that happens? Because we're in our flesh. And as long as we're in our flesh, y'all, we want to do things that we're not supposed to do. And we want to fix things that we are not supposed to fix. We have to learn to live controlled lives, to overcome self-indulgence, to help us strengthen our spiritual lives. So the next thing is, to restore my spiritual strength, I must also overcome resentment. Sometimes folks can do us wrong, and that causes us to be resentful. It depletes our spiritual energy. When we look at the life of Samson, y'all, he lived a life of constant rage. He was a very violent, resentful person. He's always saying to everybody, I'm going to get revenge. Like, in fact, if you're reading along with us in our Bible reading plan just this morning, y'all read this part of the story where he has a bet and he loses the bet, and because he loses the bet, he goes and kills 30 people. Like, who wants to hang out with a guy like that? Right? Like he was full of rage. Judges 15 tells us that he marries this woman. He gets into a domestic dispute with her. He goes back to his mom and dad's house to live with his mom and dad. Does that sound familiar to anybody? And then while he's gone, his father-in-law doesn't think he's coming back, so his father-in-law gives his wife to the best man at Samson's wedding. So when he comes back to get his wife, and the father-in-law says, I gave her to your best man, he's like, what? And he loses his mind, and he just says to his father-in-law, you can't blame me for what happens now. What? He goes out and seeks revenge. It is time to go. His excuse this time in Scripture is, they hurt me first. Do y'all remember when you're a little kid and you get on to because you've hit your brothers and sisters, and your mom's like, why did you do that? Because they hit me first. Right? Anybody else ever say that? Because they hit me first. This is Samson's excuse in this story, is they started it, but I'm going to finish it. Right? That's how he was just full of resentment. So to overcome this weakness of resentment, we have to base our choices on a response rather than a reaction. Samson always got angry, and he reacted instead of responding. Anybody else struggle with this? Any 8s on the Enneagram in the room? I am always reacting before I respond. I have loving people around me who are like, cool your jets, lady. Right? Like, I struggle with this. I want to react because I want to fix it. Right? I want to fix it. I want to get it done with. Tell me the pain and let me get it done with, and let's move on. Like, I am always in that space. And I'm not saying you can never get angry, right? Like, we have to get angry, but what we have to learn is how to control our anger. We have to learn how to control it. We have to choose. It is a choice for us to respond and not react. And as we learn to choose that, it's going to give us spiritual strength. The Bible makes it really clear that if we react in a resentful way, it will hurt more than the other person. It will remove the pure life out of us. Job 18:4 says, you are only hurting yourself with your anger. God says that resentment is a waste. It wastes our time because we're always caught up in the past. It wastes our energy because it drains us emotionally. It wastes our creativity. I mean, how creative can we get when we're seeking revenge? If you don't know, listen to any country song about a woman who was cheated on. We can get real creative when we're seeking revenge, okay? But y'all, Samson was creative. There is one point in the Bible where he's mad, right after his father-in-law tells him this, and he goes and gets 300 fox, and he ties their tails together. Then he puts a torch in between their tied together tails, and he sets it on fire and sends them loose in the fields so that they will burn down the fields. One, why? But two, he was really creative in his revenge, right? Proverbs 29:11 says, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. I want you to circle in your outline, keeps himself. We have to keep ourselves under control. God says, don't allow yourself to get resentful and revengeful against people who hurt you. Why? Because it zaps your strength out of your life. Instead, the word says, forgive them. Turn them over to God so that your spiritual strength will stay strong. Y'all, we only have a certain amount of energy, and we don't want to waste it trying to get even. We can also do this with the people that we love. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama of situations, of life circumstances, of hurts, and you want to help, right? Like you want to help somebody who's hurting and they're in pain. But what happens is if we're not careful, we begin to then take on what they're going through. And we want to help them. We want to fix it. And then we begin to get resentful. We begin to struggle. And y'all, what we've got to do is we've got to protect our spiritual energy. There are times when, yes, you have to sit with that person and you got to feel it with them. But when it turns into it's just depleting both of you, you have to be the one who steps forward and says, okay, God, I need to put my armor back on today. I need to put on the helmet to protect my mind from what this is doing to my mind. I got to put back on the breastplate to protect my heart from the pain and the turmoil that this person's going through. Like, I got to protect myself. And so there's times when, yes, you need to be there for your people, but you also got to have your armor on. You got to be able to pull back and say, God, I got to focus back on you because this is depleting my energy. This happened to me just a couple weeks ago. I was preparing for a message, and the situation that came to me was really terrible. It involved some people from our church, and there was immense hurt and pain, and I'm trying to help this family through this situation. But what I recognized was I went into fix-it mode. Instead of stopping in that moment and saying, God, I don't have a clue what to do right now. I am surrendering this to you. I began to try to give my opinion and my advice. And it began to zap my energy. And my father-in-law, who is very loving, and sometimes I just don't want to hear his advice, said to me, Camilla, the enemy is distracting you. This is the biggest smoke screen I've ever seen. God knows what you're supposed to be doing with this Easter message. And he's trying to distract you. And I need you to pull away, and I need you to stop. You need to give this to God and let God do what only he can do, and you need to surrender. And I just remember in that moment being like, man, I hate having to learn these lessons over and over. But it was zapping my spiritual energy. It was zapping my spiritual strength. So I had to give it over. Well, guys, we have to learn how to keep our spiritual gas tank full. To be spiritually strong, so we have to overcome our weaknesses in self-control and in resentment, but we also have to overcome carelessness. This time, Samson's excuse was, it'll be different for me. He got careless. When we're careless with our health, does it weaken us? Yeah, we get wore out, stressed out, exhausted, overcommitted, and we become spiritually depleted, making us weak. You know, there were warning signs to my health, but I just kept moving, right? It made me weak. What about money? If we're careless with our money, does it weaken us? Yeah, what if we just stop managing our checking account? What if we get comfortable with the finances that are coming in And we stop looking at what's happening. And then we find out we have like 20 subscriptions to every streaming service on the planet, right? Like it begins to weaken us if we become careless with our finances. What about if we're careless with our words? Does that get us into trouble? Yeah. We have to make sure with our words that we're keeping our promises. Kept promises produce power. Broken promises produce weakness in our spirit. Samson made some commitments to God all throughout the story. And those commitments were the reason why he had spiritual strength. God told Samson's parents to raise him with a clear set of vows. That as long as he committed to these vows, he would be a strong warrior with a promise on his life. And then as Samson grew older, he also took the Nazirite vow. And he committed to these vows. The Nazirite vow says, I'm going to dedicate all my life, my time, my energy to God's work. And God said, okay, Samson, you're special. And as a sign of that, you got to do these 3 things. You can't drink alcohol, even though everybody else is doing it. You got to eat a special diet, even though you really want to eat that kind of food. And you can never cut your hair. Even if everybody's going to the barber shop and they got a tight fade, you can't cut your hair. Samson's commitments to God were the source of his strength. Sometimes our greatest strengths, though, are our greatest weaknesses. Our friends, our commitments to God, to our family, to our friends, they are the source of our strength. And we have to never get careless with them. So how do we overcome carelessness? We have to base our life on commitments rather than convenience. Samson was continually compromising his commitments, his convictions, for the sake of convenience. He was careless with his commitment. Y'all, he toyed with temptation. He was always saying, how close to the fire can I get before I get burned? Anybody else ever live that kind of life? How close can I get to the edge before I go over? The best example of Samson's carelessness was in his relationship with Delilah. Some of y'all don't even know this stuff that I was telling you about Samson. All you know is about Delilah. Samson and Delilah. That's what we've heard our whole life. Samson had 3 women in these chapters, but out of all the women that Samson had relations with, Delilah is who stole his heart. So when the enemy, the Philistine leaders, they found out that Delilah was his girlfriend, they hired her to find out the source of his strength because they know that he can take them out. So every night she woos Samson, right? And he's like smitten with her. And so every night she's wooing him to try to figure out what is the source of his strength. And the first night, Samson, tell me the source of your strength. And he's like, okay, well, you see, if you will tie me with 7 strings from a bow and arrow, it will make me lose my strength. And she's like, okay, thank you, honey. And she woos him off to sleep. And then she's like, hey, yo, enemy, come on. He said 7 strings. You tie him with this. When he wakes up, he's going to be powerless. So they sneak in the middle of the night. They tie him up. Samson, the enemy's here. And he wakes up and he's like, no. Because it's not true, right? So he shows them his strength. So then it goes to the second night. Samson, how could you lie to me? What is the source of your strength? If you love me, you'll tell me, right? And he's like, oh, it's new rope. You put new rope on me, I'm going to lose all my strength. And she's like, awesome. It's wonderful. Go to sleep. And he does. And guess what? She ties him up with new rope. The enemy is waiting. She wakes him up, and immediately he's scared, but he breaks through the rope because that ain't what is the source of his strength. But y'all see how he's kind of giving in to the carelessness, right? Like he's just playing along with her. So then we get to the third night, and she's like, Samson, come on. You love me. Like, tell me, why are you lying to me? Tell me what is the source of your strength. And he's like, okay, so I have 7 braids. And if you braid them into the loom and you put a pin in it, that's what's the source of my strength. If you do that, I'm going to lose it. Y'all see how he's getting closer to the real truth. So he's just doing it, and he's doing it. And she's like, okay, awesome. So she tells the enemy, this is what it is. So he wakes up that next morning, and guess what? She has tied his braids into the loom. But unbeknownst to her, this is not what is the source of his strength. So he gets up and he takes them out again. You guys see this cycle that's happening. He's toying with temptation. But we get to this point, and I love what it says, because it says she begins to pressure him. He starts to give a little. She continues to use her words and her power over him to break down his spiritual strength. The word says she did this day after day until he was annoyed to death. Anybody ever been there? Like the enemy just keeps coming at you over and over and over. And finally you're just like, forget it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it because I'm annoyed to death. Right? Like it's so easy when we're at that place, when it just keeps coming at us and coming at us and coming at us, or the ads keep coming at us and coming at us and coming at us. And it's so easy to just step over that line. It's so easy when someone's driving us nuts and they just keep coming at us that finally we're just like, forget it, I'm giving up. I'm just going to do it. I'll deal with the consequences later. Like that's what we see in this moment. He then tells her, fine, woman, leave me alone. The source of my strength is my hair. If you cut off my hair, I will be like any other man. So he goes off to sleep that night, and what does she do? She tells the enemy, this is the source of his strength. And so as he is asleep, they come in and they cut his hair. He wakes up, and he doesn't even know that his strength is gone. He's just been playing along. He's been getting careless. He's been tempted. And so he goes to defeat them, and guess what? It's gone. He's powerless. The Philistine people capture Samson, and they gouge out his eyes, and they throw him in prison. You see, at that moment, Samson realized he has given both his strength and his eyes to people rather than God. The man who's already been shown to be spiritually weak is now physically weak. The man who was spiritually blind is now physically blind. The man who was a spiritual slave has now become a slave in the flesh. And y'all, this can happen to any of us. Over the years, we've seen so many giants, both in pastors, priests, politicians, and they were shocked because of their temptation that they fall into with sexual sin. But can I just say that that doesn't just happen? That's something that happens over time. We wonder, how did they get here? They have this great family, or man, they have everything going for them. But can I just say that this happens over time? It's a slippery slope. It's a little leak that's happening. So instead of us saying, how close to the fire can I get? How close to the edge can I get? What we've got to do as followers of Jesus is say, how close to God can I get? How close to the Father can I get right now? Because I don't have the willpower. I don't have the strength. I don't have what it takes to get through this on my own. So God, I got to trust you. I mean, just take praying and reading our Bible. Y'all, that's the first thing to go. When we're under stress or we're involved in sin, that's the first thing that we let go. Is we stop reading our Bible, we stop praying, we stop listening to worship music. But that's the thing that renews our spiritual strength. That's the thing that we have to stay invested in. That's the commitment we can't break for convenience. We have to stay committed to those things. And can I just say that we need accountability? You guys, as long as we're in this flesh, we need support. I would love to say that if you're struggling with something, just take it to God and God's going to do it. He is God. But we're also in this flesh, and he also gave us people. There are so many scriptures that talk about iron sharpening iron and us being there for one another. If you are struggling with something, can I just say, make sure you have people around you who can hold you accountable. People around you who know what's going on. Y'all, they say all the time, they know where the bodies are buried. They know what's happening in your life. They know the struggles that you have, and there is no judgment and there is no condemnation. They are just there to encourage you, to hold you accountable, and to walk with you. Samson's story would be a tough one if it just stopped there. If it stopped with him in chains, he's been blinded and he's now the laughing stock of the enemy. But in prison, what we get to see is this is where he had a renewal of strength. Judges 16:28 says, "Then Samson prayed to the Lord, 'Sovereign Lord, remember me again. Oh God, please strengthen me just one more time.'" I think in this moment, Samson knew that his strength was gone, his sight was gone, and at this moment he knew, I got to rely on God's strength in my weakness. You see, God tried to use Samson's first wife to lead the Israelites to freedom, but his self-indulgence and his resentment overtook him, and it distracted him. Samson's weaknesses are the things that continue to challenge his purpose. He relied on his strength, not the Lord's. And if you know the rest of the story, you know that Samson's last day of his life was more victorious than any day he had lived before. You guys, in Hebrews 11, Samson is in the hall of faith. All of these failures that happened in his life became his greatest victory. Because what I know is that nothing can derail the sovereignty of God in our life. As we read through to the end of this story, on this day when Samson is pleading with God to restore his faith, to restore his strength, we see this sovereignty happen. The promise to Samson's mother in the womb, to his father, to him, was that he would deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. And in this last moment, as he put his faith, his obedience, his trust in the Lord, and he says, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Just one more time, give me strength." He knew that in that moment, when the Lord would give him strength, that he would deliver on the promise. He knew that in that moment, he would deliver the Israelites. Samson knew, but I've got to have that faith. You guys, what he did was he told the Lord, God, it is your strength that is made perfect in my weakness. God, take this weakness and use it for your glory. God, use it as your promise. Fulfill what you've spoke over me my whole life. And that's such good news, because some of you are here today and you already think, I ain't got nothing left. I am spiritually depleted. My eyes have been removed. I am wore out. I got nothing. But can I say that when we are honest and when we face the Lord and say, God, your strength is made perfect in my weakness, can I tell you that he meets us in that place? God gives us the strength that we can't even understand, because it's not in our power. It's in his power. Mercy and strength are available to all of us. We can start again. I gave up. I was running away. And God was like, no, you ain't. Let's start again. And so that's what we do. We go to God and we humble ourselves and we say, Lord, I can't do this on my own. I need you. And God meets us. Isaiah 40:31 says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. You see, I sang a song my whole life about Jesus loves me. And what it says is we are weak, but he is strong. He is strong. If we put our hope in ourselves and others, we're going to be defeated. What we have to do and we have to remember is that our God sent his son for us to put our faith and our hope in him. And if we will step back out of our self-control, out of our self-indulgence, out of our pride, and we will say, God, it's yours. I don't know what else to do. I need you to renew me. If we call on the sovereign Lord like Samson did and say one more time, God, give me strength, guess what? He's going to meet you. He's going to meet you in that place, and he's going to strengthen you. But we have to put our trust and our hope in the Father, the only one who can fix whatever situation we're in. Let's pray. What is the weak link in your life? Is it self-control? Do you find yourself saying, just this once, it's no big deal? It's no big deal. I can do these kinds of things. I can watch these kinds of things. I can read these kinds of things, eat these kinds of things, and it won't bother me. Are you basing your decisions on pleasure rather than principle? Is it resentment that is the weak link in your life? You're still trying to get even for past hurts. You see, some of us need to allow God to heal our hearts from past hurts so that we can get on with our wonderful future. Is it carelessness? Maybe you've allowed some slippage in your commitments to Christ. You've bought into the lie, I can handle it. It won't bother me. You've been flirting with something that you know is wrong. Maybe you've been careless with your spiritual habits. What's the weak link? I want to ask you today to recommit your spirit to the Lord. And I know that some of you are saying, that sounds great, but I feel like I've messed up my life so much, God can never use me. But can I tell you that you're wrong? God never gave up on Samson, and he's never going to give up on you. You can come back to him today. It doesn't matter where you've been. All that matters now is the direction of your feet today. You come to Christ and you say, I give you all of my life, Lord. Take it and remake it into something beautiful. And so if that's you across this room, and you are in a position to say, God, I'm tired. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of hiding stuff. I just can't do it anymore. Then I'm just going to ask you to just raise your hand. If you're in a place to say, God, I need you to step in and become the Lord of my life. I need your strength because on my own, it is not working. Come into my heart, God. If that is you in this moment, I'm just going to ask you across this room to raise your hand. All you're saying is, Jesus, I need you. I need you in my life. I need you in my heart. I need you. I see you. I see you. I see you across this room. I see your hands. Thank you. But most importantly, God sees your hands. Church family, I want us to say this prayer together with all of those who just accepted Christ into their heart. Jesus, I need you to strengthen me. I'm tired of trying to do this on my own. I need a Savior. I need your eyes to see. As best as I know how, I want to follow you. Lord, fill me with your Spirit. Fill me with your strength. In Jesus' name, amen. And with your head still bowed and your eyes still closed, I know that some of you in this room right now are depleted. Man, you're running on empty. And if that is you, I'm just going to ask you with every head still bowed for you to be vulnerable with me. If you are in a space right now where you just want to say, Camilla, I'm running on empty. I need God's Spirit to step in and take control. Then I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand so that I know who I'm praying with, because I want to pray for you today. Thank you. Thank you. Father, we come to you right now, Lord, and we ask you to step in. God, you know the depth of what is happening with the lives in this room. God, nothing is catching you by surprise. But Father, right now we come to you as your people, and we humble ourselves before you, and we surrender our situations to you. God, we ask that you will intervene. Lord, that right now you will begin a renewal of our spiritual strength. God, that right now you will speak to our hearts and you will refresh our spirit. God, you will remind us that it's not about the things that are happening in our life, but Lord, you will refocus our eyes on you. God, from this moment forward, we will put our attention back on you, Lord, and we will trust that you have a plan, that you have a purpose. And even if we can't see it, God, we believe that you're still working. So God, we give it to you and we thank you. We thank you, Lord, for the beauty that you're going to bring from this pain as we trust the process. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.